Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about Halloween parties gone wrong in the Appalachian Mountains. These stories will make you think twice before heading to a party past the ridge this Halloween night. But before we continue, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to like and share. Thank you all. Now, let's begin. The Halloween party was out at Kendra's place, her family's old place past Mason Ridge, way out where the road turns from gravel to mud and the GPS starts lying to you. She used to throw parties there every year. Same setup. Everyone brings something cheap to drink. Someone builds a fire. People show up in costumes that took either 2 weeks to perfect or 5 minutes to throw together. It was always a mess, but a good kind of mess. This time felt different though. Kendra hadn't stayed out there since her dad passed away the winter before, and most of us knew she was only hosting the party to say goodbye to the place. It was getting sold in November. I think she just wanted one last night with people filling the house instead of it sitting empty. I went as a scarecrow thrift store flannel, straw poking out of my sleeves, some rope tied around my waist. Barely cost me anything, and it looked good enough under the porch lights. My cousin Jace rode out with me. He showed up wearing a blank plastic mask and the same jeans he wore to work. Didn't even bother with a full outfit. Said he was just there for the beer. We pulled into the driveway around 7. The gravel was already packed with pickups and old Subarus, everyone parking half in the ditch like usual. The house hadn't changed. It still had that crooked porch swing and peeling green paint. Wind chimes were knocking against each other in the breeze, even though I don't think anyone remembered hanging them up. One was missing a piece and kept clinking off key. People were already loud when we walked up. I could smell the bonfire before I saw it. Kendra came out to meet us, arms wide, a little buzzed already. She was wearing a torn-up wedding dress and had fake blood dripping down her chest. She hugged us both like we were family and handed me a red Solo cup that was half full of something orange and dangerous smelling. "You two better not be planning to drive tonight," she said, and then turned to yell something at someone across the yard. Same Kendra as always. The kitchen was packed wall to wall with people. Someone was taking selfies in front of the old mirror that had probably been hanging over the sink since the 80s. Out back, the stereo was blasting some kind of bass-heavy playlist that kept skipping like it was playing from a scratched CD. The fire pit was going strong, smoke blowing toward the woods. Everything was loud, familiar, and just chaotic enough to feel like Halloween should. For the first couple of hours, it felt like any other party. Jace wandered off to talk to a girl he knew from school. I sat on the porch with a drink and watched people throw logs on the fire like they were trying to start a bonfire competition. There were kids laughing, someone juggling empty beer cans, a guy in a chicken costume doing donuts in the yard with a lawn chair tied to the back of his truck. But around 10, Jace came back out of breath, patting his pockets. "Dude, my phone's gone," he said. I swear I left it charging in the truck. We went out to check, and the second I opened the truck door, I knew something was off. The dome light didn't come on. Battery was stone cold. Not like we left the headlights on, more like someone had cut a wire. Jay swore under his breath and jogged around to the back. The tailgate was down. His backpack was gone. So was the locked toolbox he kept under the seat, the one with his tools from work. I reached for my keys. My pockets were empty. "Did you lock it?" I asked. "Always do," he said, not even looking up. We grabbed a flashlight from someone in the house and searched the area around the trucks, thinking maybe someone was messing with us. Like one of those annoying, hide your stuff and laugh about it later kind of jokes. But the door seals were ripped, not a prank. Someone broke in. We told Kendra. She looked uncomfortable but sort of shrugged it off. "It's Halloween," she said. "You know how these guys are. Probably just trying to freak people out." By midnight, someone had fireworks. A bunch of us headed down the slope behind the barn to watch. The sky was mostly clear, and you could see the ridge lit up every time one of the shells exploded. The air smelled like wet grass and burned paper. I stood next to a girl dressed like a bat, black wings, dark lipstick, sipping something out of a thermos. We talked for a few minutes, light conversation. She was nice, kind of sarcastic. But then I turned around and saw a man standing up near the barn. He didn't move. He wasn't wearing a costume. Everyone else was too busy watching the sky, but I just stood there staring. He was completely still, arms at his sides, head slightly tilted like he was studying the house. When the last firework popped and I looked again, he was gone. I mentioned it to Kendra later. Asked if she'd invited anyone from outside the usual group. She frowned and said, "Nope, just people I know." By 2 a.m., people were crashing. Blankets on the floor, someone snoring in the laundry room. I stayed awake. Jace was passed out in the recliner. I sat outside again, just watching the tree line. That's when I saw someone, walking slow between the trees. No flashlight, no costume, just slipping through the gaps in the dark like they belonged there. I got up, went inside, and locked the door. About 15 minutes later, the power went out. Kendra lit some candles. Everyone thought it was funny at first. But I checked my phone. No bars, not weak signal. Nothing. Like it was jammed. I stayed up all night, just sitting there, not even pretending to sleep. When morning came, Kendra went into the kitchen and screamed. Everything in her pantry gone. Cans, bags, boxes. Even her silverware drawer was empty. We went outside and saw every truck had been broken into. No shattered glass, just pop locks. Gear missing, wallets emptied, phones smashed. What was left had been piled in the middle of the field, torn costumes, keys, someone's cracked sunglasses. Looked like a trash pile, but it was arranged, like someone wanted us to see it. We walked half a mile to get signal and called the sheriff. He showed up close to noon. Took notes, didn't act surprised. "This happens sometimes," he said. "Always Halloween. Lock your doors. Better yet, stay home next time." That evening, I got home. My front door was unlocked, nothing missing, but things were wrong. My toothbrush was on the kitchen table, couch cushions flipped, boots pointed backward, a red Solo cup on the counter, just like the ones from the party. I threw it away, locked every door, sat up all night with a bat in my lap. Jace won't talk about it now, says nothing happened to him, but I can tell he's lying. It's almost Halloween again. I've got new locks, new phone, new truck. Kendra texted last week, sent me a photo of her old porch boarded up. Said, finally sold. Carter and I rolled into the valley just after noon on Halloween. We were heading to this costume party out in a place called Rockhall Ridge, a tiny mountain town tucked way back in the Appalachians. One gas station, one diner, and not much else. I hadn't heard of it before, but Carter had gone to college with the guy throwing the party. Said his name was Nolan. They hadn't talked in a while, but apparently Nolan had moved out there and swore up and down the town did Halloween right. I was skeptical, but Carter was all in. He thought it'd be a fun weekend, drink, dress up, crash in the mountains, maybe detox from our usual routines. I didn't really care either way. Work had been exhausting. My lease was up in 2 months. I was sleepwalking through life anyway. But something felt off before we even hit the town limits. There were people out on porches, just sitting, not moving, not talking, no decorations, no kids trick-or-treating. It was Halloween, but the place looked like it had collectively opted out, not even a pumpkin on a step. I remember we passed this woman standing near what looked like a post office. She was sweeping the sidewalk in tiny strokes, back and forth, over the same clean patch of concrete. There wasn't anything there, not a leaf, not a speck of dirt. She didn't look up when we drove by, and no one waved. That was the part that stuck with me. In towns like that, people usually wave. Nolan's place was on the edge of town, tucked behind a line of tall trees. It had one of those long gravel driveways that crunch under your tires the whole way down. The house was bigger than I expected. Older too, but well kept. There was a fire pit already going in the backyard, smoke curling up into the branches. Carter was pumped. Said it looked properly creepy. Nolan came out to meet us wearing a plague doctor mask, long beak, black lenses. He hugged Carter like they were brothers and gave me a firm handshake, even though he didn't know me. He was talkative at first. Said people would start arriving soon and the real fun would kick off after sundown. Inside, there were already 8 or 10 people mingling, everyone in costume. Most of them looked like they were in their 20s or 30s, all from out of town, based on the way they talked. There was a big folding table with drinks, cheap candy, and a couple bowls of chips that had already gone stale. I grabbed a beer and wandered. I'd gone for the easiest costume I could throw together, detective. Just a thrifted trench coat and a fake badge. Carter had done the lumberjack thing, flannel and plastic axe. Nolan had ditched the plague mask and swapped to a full-face vinyl skull by the time we came back outside. At one point, he leaned over and told us, totally straight-faced, "Local tradition is full masks after dark. You respect the rules, you stay safe." I thought he was joking, but nobody else even smiled. As the sun went down, more people showed up, all in masks. Not the kind you buy last minute at a drugstore. These were full-face, detailed, some clearly handmade. I tried starting a conversation with this woman dressed as a witch-pointed hat, long cloak, the works. She stared through her eye holes for a second, didn't say a word, then just turned and walked away. Carter gave me a look. I shrugged. Maybe she's just really into method acting. We tried to keep it light, got a little buzzed, but it was hard to ignore how weird things felt. By 8, the place was packed. The music was loud, but the people weren't. Nobody danced. Nobody really talked. They stood near the fire or slowly walked around the yard or wandered into the trees just past the fence line. There was a guy in a scarecrow outfit who walked the same slow circle around the house, again and again, never speaking. A man in an old-fashioned miner's outfit sat in a lawn chair and stared at us. Everywhere we moved, his eyes followed. I tested it, took a few wide loops around the fire pit. He didn't blink. The only people acting remotely normal were the ones Carter and I had arrived with. But even they started getting stiff, quiet once the fire got going higher, like something clicked over. Then Nolan pulled Carter aside. They talked near the shed for maybe 5 minutes. When Carter came back, he said Nolan wanted to show us the real reason for the party. I laughed. "What is this? Occult hazing?" He smirked. "Probably, but I'm bored." So we followed Nolan out past the edge of the yard toward an old wooden shed. Looked like it had been there for decades. Inside, it smelled like dust and mold. On the walls and shelves were rows of wooden masks. Real ones hand-carved with paint chipping off. Some had tufts of hair, others had what looked like real teeth embedded into them. One had nails sticking out of the mouth like jagged teeth. Nolan told us these were protection masks. Said people used to carve one every year to keep things away on Halloween. "Keep what away?" I asked. He just smiled and said, "You'll see." That's when I should have left. Just turned around, climbed in the car, and driven off. But I didn't. I wish I could say I had some excuse, but I think I was just curious and a little drunk. A few minutes later, Nolan announced it was time for the parade. Everyone started lining up behind the house. Still dead quiet. No laughter. No small talk. Just people in masks, clutching them like they mattered. Carter leaned in again and whispered, "Just go with it. Don't break character." That's what they do. We got in line. We followed them into the woods. It was almost pitch black. The only light came from the house behind us, and even that faded quickly. No flashlights. No lanterns. Just footsteps on dry leaves. After a while, a few people started chanting. Low, rhythmic. I couldn't understand a word. It wasn't English. Then someone ahead of me collapsed, just dropped. No warning. They twitched for a second on the ground and then went still. Nobody stopped. I froze, instinct kicking in, but Carter grabbed my arm and said, "Don't break the line." His voice didn't sound right. So I kept walking. After what felt like forever, we came into a clearing. There was a big circle of stones, and in the middle of it, a charred, splintered tree stump. Nolan walked into the center and took off his mask. His face was covered in soot, like he'd rubbed ashes all over himself. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out something wet and red. An animal heart. Real. Fresh. He tossed it into the hollow of the stump and started chanting. Everyone else joined in. I just stood there, frozen. My body felt too heavy, like gravity had doubled. I looked at Carter. He was staring straight ahead, wouldn't look at me. Then something rose out of the stump. I don't know how else to say it. It wasn't a person. It wasn't an animal. It looked like a long, twisted coil wrapped in rags, bark, bone. Its eyes were sewn shut. Antlers jutted out of its head, bent and fused. It hovered, didn't walk. No legs. Just floated a few inches off the ground. And it was cold, instant drop. I could see my breath. I turned to run. Carter grabbed my arm. "You can't leave," he whispered. "You were invited." I shoved him, hard. And I ran. No plan. No plan. No direction. just back, away, through the dark, hoping I didn't trip and break my neck. I could hear feet behind me, then silence. I kept running. I made it back to the house. It was empty. The fire was out. All the lights were off. I tore through the place, searching for my keys. Gone. I didn't wait. I sprinted out to the road. After maybe half an hour, a truck passed and I flagged it down. Older guy driving. Didn't say a word until we were way out of town. Then he glanced at me and said, "You were lucky. Most folks don't get out if they're chosen." I didn't respond. Just sat there, trying not to shake. When I got home the next morning, my apartment door was open. Every drawer, every cabinet emptied. My stuff was scattered everywhere, like someone had gone through everything and left it exactly where it landed. On the couch, my Halloween costume had been laid out, folded neatly. On top of it was one of those carved wooden masks. It had a tooth set into it. One of mine. I didn't go back to work. And I haven't celebrated Halloween since. Halloween's never really been my thing. I didn't hate it, but I never got into it the way some people do. Costumes, haunted houses, the fake blood, none of it ever felt that fun to me. But that year, I went out anyway. Only because my cousin Margot called me 3 separate times that week, sounding more anxious with each call. She was throwing a Halloween party at her boyfriend's place out in Belden Hollow, way outside the edge of town where the trees get too close together and phone signals get patchy. "It's just too much house," she said. "And he's invited people I don't even know. Can you please just come?" I didn't need all the details to get her meaning. Margot wasn't the dramatic type, but her boyfriend had this habit of bringing around new friends every few weeks. Guys from his job, girls he used to know, people just passing through. She never liked them. Honestly, neither did I. There was always something off. Too intense or too quiet. People laughed at the wrong parts of conversations. You know the type. I got there around 7:30. The place was easy to miss, set back off a dirt road with a slanted gravel driveway that looked like it had eaten a few bumpers. I had to wedge my car in sideways between 2 trees just to keep it from rolling. The house itself was strange. It used to be a church. Not the small-town wooden kind, but stone and tall, with old architecture that made it feel heavier than it should. The pointed windows were still intact, and the old bell tower had been turned into a loft space. Someone had dragged the kegs up there. Great idea. The porch light flickered as I stepped up, and Margot was already waiting. She was dressed as a crow wings, feathers glued onto black boots, thick eyeliner. She looked cool, but tired. Her mouth tightened when she saw me. "You made it," she said, then lowered her voice. "Don't drink anything that's already open. I'll grab you something sealed." She didn't explain, and I didn't ask. The second I stepped inside, I could tell what she meant. The music was too loud for how slowly people were moving. Like it was turned up to 11, but everyone was reacting in slow motion. I watched a guy in a scarecrow mask stand perfectly still by the fireplace, facing the corner like he was grounded. He never moved. No one seemed to notice. I followed Margot to the kitchen, where she dug out a lukewarm root beer from a case sitting on top of the fridge. "This is all I've touched tonight," she said, pressing it into my hand. "Don't open anything else. Seriously." I nodded. She didn't have to convince me. Later on, I ran into this guy I sort of remembered from high school. Riley Baines, I think. We weren't friends, but I knew his face. He'd moved out to Memphis, worked in HVAC or something like that. He was hanging around with this woman in a red hoodie, tall, pale, no costume. She wasn't talking to anyone. Just standing there, fixated on this set of old black and white photographs on the hallway wall. The kind you'd expect in a church, baptisms, choirs, serious faces. She was leaning close to one of them, a riverside ceremony. The people in it looked more like they were attending a burial than a baptism. Her nose was inches from the glass, like she was trying to smell it. "Hey," I said, kind of awkwardly. "Pretty weird, right?" She didn't look at me, just turned and walked away like I hadn't said anything. Riley smirked. Margot's boyfriend invited her, met her today. "She's weird, but kinda hot?" I didn't respond. Something about her made my stomach turn, like she'd walked out of a different room in time. By 10, the vibe had gotten worse. The red bulb someone had put in the corner lamp was the only light source left, and it made everyone's faces look raw, like they'd been scraped with sandpaper. People were dancing too hard or passed out in corners. That was when I noticed the basement door. It had been closed when I got there. Margot had made a point of telling me not to go near it. "Floorboards are soft, and there's copperheads down there," she'd said. Real casual, like it was just a fun little hazard to avoid. But now the door was wide open, and the scarecrow guy had walked through it like he belonged down there. Nobody reacted. Nobody even looked at him. I went to find Margot. She wasn't on the porch. Not in the kitchen. I checked the loft, but it was just chaos up there. Someone throwing up into a basket, someone else trying to climb onto a rafter for reasons I didn't want to know. Then I heard a sharp scream from the kitchen. Not loud, just too close. I pushed through and found a girl on the counter, cradling her hand. There was glass in her palm deep, like she'd crushed a jar or punched through something. She was shaking. Kept saying, "He made me do it. He said I had to." No one asked who he was. I wrapped her hand with a towel and handed her off to a few people dressed like pirates, who immediately started debating if bleeding counted as a costume. I needed air. Margot was outside with Riley again. She looked worse, pale, a little out of it. She glanced at me. "You went in the kitchen?" "Yeah," I said. She nodded just once. Then she said, "I think someone came out of the woods." Like, not from town, someone who lives in them. I didn't know how to respond. I just stood there. Then Riley asked, "Where's your car?" I turned to look. My headlights were on. "I didn't leave them like that," I said. We ran down. Both passenger doors were wide open. The trunk, too. It looked like someone had dug through everything. Receipts, my charger, a broken pair of sunglasses. But nothing was missing, except there was something new. A photo. It was old, printed on glossy paper, like it came from a disposable camera. It showed a group of kids in Halloween costumes standing outside this house. One of them was Margot. She looked maybe 12. I brought it to her. She stared at it like it had punched her. "This was from the year of the fire," she said. "We weren't supposed to have people over, but we did. Someone lit a candle too close to the curtains. It spread. She never told me this was her family's old house. I didn't invite anyone in a red hoodie," she whispered. I swear to God, we tried to find the woman. Nothing. She was gone. Basement door closed again. Riley was gone too. I told Margot we should leave. She said she had to shut it down first, make sure everyone got out safe. Around 1 in the morning, I went upstairs to find a bathroom. The door was cracked. I pushed it open and just stood there. The mirror had been scratched up, symbols carved into the glass. Circles, jagged stars, weird spirals, and scrawled beneath it in black marker, 6 blood, 4 left. I called Margot up. She took one look and said, "No one's been up here. This floor's off limits. Stairs are unsafe." We started clearing the party. Told people the cops were on the way. One guy in a skeleton hoodie laughed and said, "It's time anyway," like he knew something we didn't. Then he pulled the breaker. Everything went black. I nearly fell down the stairs. Someone grabbed my shoulder halfway, but when I spun around, there was no one there. We waited on the porch for her boyfriend to get back. Showed him the picture, the car, the mirror. One of his friends went dead quiet and said he had to check on something. Never came back. Next morning, we returned. The house was spotless, like it had never been used. No cups, no mess, no music set up. Even the towel I used to wrap that girl's hand was gone. My cousin Silas bought this old timber frame house up on a ridge outside Grayson. That fall, he decided to throw a Halloween party. First one since moving in, and knowing Silas, he didn't do anything halfway. He hand-delivered actual paper invitations. Spent 2 weeks brewing cider, rented 3 kegs. Built a DJ setup out of mismatched gear and ran extension cords through the barn rafters. It was half genius, half fire hazard. But the invite list? Packed. People came from all over, cousins, co-workers, old friends from college. I made the drive up from Charlottesville with my roommate Josh and 2 other friends, Aisha and Marcus. We all went full slasher themed, cheap masks, fake knives, a lot of black clothing. Very creative, I know. By the time we got there around 8, the place was already buzzing. Cars were parked nose to tail all the way down the ridge. Bonfires lit up the yard. Someone had brought those giant speakers that make your rib cage shake when the bass hits. The barn glowed orange from the lights Silas had strung across the beams. Everyone showed up in costume except Silas's neighbor, Hank. Hank wandered in wearing work boots and a faded flannel shirt, no costume, holding something in a brown paper bag. He didn't really mingle, just stood near the edge of the yard muttering to himself. Silas had told me about Hank before. He lived alone on the next property over, worked on machines, didn't do small talk. Apparently, he spent a lot of time building these creepy little crosses out of deer bones and hanging them around his shed. Hard to say where the religion ends and the weird hobby begins, Silas once joked. I figured Hank was harmless, local oddball. Every rural town's got one. Everything was fine until around 9:30. That's when the barn went completely dark. No music, no lights. Just this sudden dead silence that hit hard after all the noise. At first, everyone laughed like it was a Halloween gag. Someone shouted something about nice timing. Then someone else said their phone had lost signal. Mine had too. No bars. Nothing. Silas and I headed around back to check the breaker box. It was hanging open. Every switch was flipped off. And something was crammed inside, some kind of dried vine or root bundle, knotted together with a strip of cloth. Looked handmade. Ritual-ish. Neither of us wanted to touch it directly. I found a stick, fished it out, and chucked it into the bushes. Silas looked pissed but didn't say much. He flipped the breakers, and the power came back on, at least in the house. The barn stayed dead. We tried everything, switching cords, resetting the power strips, unplugging and replugging. Nothing worked. Like something had just burned out. Still, people shrugged it off and kept partying. Booze helps with that. Then, around 10:30, this guy, Derek maybe, told Silas his car had been broken into. I assumed he was just drunk and misplaced his stuff. But then another person said their window was shattered. And then another. People started checking. Glove boxes open, consoles torn up, wallets missing. One girl came back shaking, said her back seat had been cut up. Long, deep slashes across the fabric. Another guy's headlights had been smashed in, like with a crowbar. Silas tried to call the sheriff, but nobody had a signal. Nothing. Phones were just glowing screens. Useless. Then I realized Hank was gone. I asked Silas if he'd seen him. He just shook his head slowly. Said Hank had wandered off after the power cut, headed up the ridge into the woods, didn't say a word, just slipped away. I can't explain why that set me off, but it did. I got this tightness in my chest like something was closing in. Told Josh and the others to stay close. Silas grabbed another guy and drove down the road to try and call for help. The rest of us hung back by the fire. We figured it was some idiot trying to mess with people. Then, maybe 20 minutes later, we heard screaming, not party screaming. Real, throat-tearing panic. It came from around the side of the house. I ran over and saw a girl, Devin, on her knees, holding her shoulder. Her costume was ripped open in the back. Blood on the fabric. She kept saying something dragged across her in the dark. Sharp. Fast. Fast. She didn't see who. Her boyfriend ran around yelling. A few people chased into the dark, but no one saw anything. Still no Silas. Fires burning low. People starting to bunch together, talking over each other. That nervous kind of chatter that builds and builds when no one knows what to do. Then the house lights cut out. This time, the panic hit fast. Screaming. Stumbling. People tripping over chairs, running in different directions. A few tried to start their cars, some wouldn't turn over, others had flat tires. Phones flashing like fireflies. No connection. I grabbed my group and headed toward the house. Inside, it felt wrong. Cold, like basement cold. The kind that sinks into your hands even if you're wearing gloves. Fridge door was hanging open. Cabinets too. Drawers pulled out. Utensils all over the floor, forks, knives, spoons, just scattered like someone had raked through everything. Then we saw the kitchen table. 3 pumpkins. Not the ones from earlier. These were new, wet inside. The knife marks were sharp and clean, like someone had just finished carving them. One had a human tooth stuck in its grin. Nobody spoke. Josh turned pale. Aisha started whispering, almost chanting something under her breath. Marcus grabbed a kitchen knife and said we should get upstairs now. We locked ourselves in Silas's room, moved furniture against the door. There was a shotgun mounted over the bed, not loaded. We searched the closet and found one shell, loaded it. Sat in the dark, breathing hard. Outside, nothing. No sound, just silence. Eventually, we heard gravel crunching. A car. Headlights. Silas's voice calling out. We ran. He'd brought the sheriff. By then, half the guests were already gone. Some walked miles down the ridge. Devin went to the hospital, needed stitches. The sheriff didn't say much. Just walked through the house, took the pumpkins, the knife, and that tooth. Said it looked human, local probably. That was it. Silas installed cameras the next week. They got ripped out within 24 hours. The only thing left was the mounting plate and another strip of cloth tied around the exposed wire, same kind as the one in the breaker box. I don't go back up there. Silas sold the place. Now, every Halloween, I stay in. No costumes, no porch light. I sit by the window with a loaded shotgun and wait for the night to pass. Haven't seen Hank since that night. It started on a Saturday weekend before Halloween. There was a party at Trent's uncle's barn, way out past Devil's Hollow. If you've ever driven out there, you know it's not really a road after a certain point. The pavement just kind of gives up, and the gravel barely pretends to be a path. You take a wrong turn out there, you're in the woods for good. We were 16. That weird age where you're too old to knock on doors for candy, too young to hit the bars, and just the right amount of dumb to think bonfires in forgotten barns sound like a great idea. Word about the party spread fast. Trent's uncle was out of town for a week, and apparently the barn already had string lights and half a sound system set up from some wedding months back. Add a Bluetooth speaker and some cheap beer, and boom, instant Halloween bash. I got there with my cousin Willa around 8. She'd been living with us since the summer, after her mom checked herself into rehab in Knoxville. Willa was just a year older, but she always felt like she was 5 steps ahead of the rest of us. She had bleached hair that never quite settled on a color, a silver lip ring she'd poked through herself, and that kind of unbothered confidence that made guys fall over themselves trying to look cool around her. That night, she showed up in this ripped red thrift store dress with fake vampire fangs that didn't fit right and boots that made her 2 inches taller than me. She looked ridiculous and cool at the same time. Me? I didn't dress up. Just jeans, hoodie, and my job of unofficial Willow Watcher for the night. The barn itself was massive, one of those Appalachian relics with weird lean-tos and second-floor half-lofts that don't go anywhere. You could tell it had been patched and repatched over the years. New pine boards nailed directly over rotted ones, some sections that looked like they'd been added sideways. From outside, light leaked out through the slats, giving the woods a kind of flickering heartbeat. You could hear the music and feel the bass before you even parked. Kids were everywhere, leaning against dusty trucks, climbing on hay bales, slipping off into the trees with people they barely knew. There was a fire pit going full blast near the edge of the clearing, with a bunch of folding chairs scattered around it and someone's Bluetooth speaker fighting to play over the wind. The vibe was good, actually. Chaotic in the way only teenage parties can be, but good. For the first hour or so, Willa vanished into the crowd. I figured she'd be fine, she always was. I leaned against the wall, sipped a Coke someone had dropped in a cooler, and watched things unfold. That's when I overheard the story. A junior named Casey guy with braces he never smiled with was passing a beer to a friend and nodding toward the far end of the barn. "You know Trent's uncle found something under there, right?" he said, pointing to a part of the wall where the boards didn't quite meet. "Last spring." Said there's a pit under the floor, like a real one. No bottom, just a hole that eats light. Everyone kind of half laughed, the way people do when they're waiting to see if the punchline's coming or if this is going somewhere weird. He said it was full of bones, Casey added. Not buried, just laid out in rows. Animal bones probably, but not scattered, arranged. Nobody laughed that time. I pretended not to be listening, but I definitely was. The way Casey said it, it didn't sound like he believed it exactly. Just that he didn't know how to not say it. Willa found me again around 9. She was dragging a guy with her, a college dude in a denim jacket, clearly too old to be hanging around high schoolers. He was already a little sloppy, smiling in that loose-jawed way drunk people do when they're trying to flirt and focus at the same time. Willa was laughing too loud, leaning into him like she didn't weigh anything. I tried to talk to her, pull her aside, ask what she was doing. She brushed me off without even breaking her smile. "I'm fine," she said, already turning back to the guy. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I stepped outside into the tree line behind the barn. The music got quieter almost immediately. I pulled out my phone, texted my dad to say everything was chill, then reached into my hoodie and found a cigarette Willa had left in there earlier. It was bent, but it lit. That's when I looked back at the barn and noticed something weird. The slats that had been glowing from inside the little gaps where the light was spilling through, they weren't there anymore. From the outside, the barn looked completely sealed up. Solid black wood. No light. No windows. No doors except the front. I frowned. Took a lap around the whole building. Same thing. Every side looked solid. No breaks in the boards. No flickers of light. Just a sealed box sitting in the middle of nowhere. I circled back around front and went in again, but the party wasn't the same anymore. The lights inside had dimmed. The music had shifted, some old folk song with no lyrics, just slow, dragging notes. Most of the people were gone. No shouting, no clinking bottles, no one around the fire. Just emptiness. I stepped inside and called Willa's name. No answer. I walked deeper. The main hall felt longer than before, like someone had stretched it. I checked one of the side rooms. A single wooden chair sat in the middle, like it had been placed there for someone. Another room had a plastic Halloween skeleton still hanging on the wall, but its chest had been carved into. Deep, uneven gouges. You don't get those from a box cutter. Not decoration, not for fun. In the back, I heard whispering, not playful, not flirty, not someone's hiding to scare you kind of whispering. This was fast, overlapping, like multiple voices trying to say different things at once. I pushed open the door to the room where it came from, and nothing. Empty. But the whispering didn't stop. It was coming from the walls, not through them, from inside them. Then the music just stopped. No fade out, no click, just gone. Dead silence. I backed out. That's when I saw her. Willa. She was standing at the far end of the barn, half in shadow, still in that red dress, but she wasn't moving, not blinking. Her mouth was open, like she was mid-sentence, but no sound was coming out, not even breath. I stepped toward her. She turned and walked into the darkness. I followed. She rounded a corner. I followed again. But when I turned the corner, nothing. She was gone. That's when the lights went out completely. I froze. Couldn't see my hands. Couldn't even see where the door had been. I started walking, bumping into boxes and beams, feeling around until I found the front. It was open, but outside was pitch black too. No fire. No cars. No road. No moonlight. Like the barn was floating in a void. Panicking now, I turned and ran back inside, switched on my phone flashlight. The back wall, where it should have ended, didn't. A narrow hallway stretched farther than it should have been able to, sloped slightly down into the hillside, like someone had dug into the rock and kept going. I followed it. I followed it. At the very end, I found her. Willa was on the floor, curled up, shaking like she was freezing. Her makeup had smeared all down her cheeks. She looked up at me, eyes unfocused, and whispered, "He tried to take my eyes." I didn't ask who. I didn't wait. I just grabbed her hand, pulled her up, and we ran. We didn't stop until we hit the trees, and through the branches, we saw lights. The road was back. The fire was burning. People were laughing again. We walked up the hill like nothing had happened. Except, no one remembered seeing Willa leave. The guy she was with, gone. No one remembered his name. No one missed him. No one reported him. When we got home 2 hours later, our back door was kicked in. TV, gone. Dad's hunting rifles, gone. The sheriff said it looked like a random break-in, but nothing else was touched, except the hallway mirror. Someone had drawn 2 red circles over where our eyes would be. My dad put up cameras after that. Willa stopped going out. I started locking my bedroom door every night, even when I was home alone. My cousin Nolan and his girlfriend Tessa had just bought a trailer up there on a chunk of land his granddad used to raise goats on. It was the first place either of them had ever owned, and they were buzzing about it. Halloween gave them the perfect excuse to show it off. They went all in cheap orange lights strung between trees, Beer buried in coolers lined with dry ice, someone's portable speaker pumping out a mix of old rock and random Spotify picks. There was even a fake graveyard made out of spray-painted plywood behind the fire pit. It was ridiculous in the way first-time parties usually are, but they meant well. Truth is, I hadn't planned to go. I don't love crowds. Never cared much about Halloween either. Too much pressure to dress up, too many people pretending to be people they aren't. But Nolan called me twice, said if I didn't come, he'd have to invite Tessa's brother as filler. Apparently that guy had a reputation for being a creep with no off switch. I figured I could at least show up for a beer, then fake an early morning and head out. I parked halfway up the slope around 7. The gravel was loose and steep, and my tires spun out more than once. When I finally reached the clearing, the place was already packed. 30, maybe 40 people, clustered around the fire or moving between the porch and coolers. Some were in costume, cheap ones mostly, the kind that come in plastic bags. I spotted a knockoff pirate, a few witches, a guy wearing scrubs like that counted. I knew maybe half the crowd, a few familiar faces from high school, a couple people I'd seen around the county fairgrounds in summer. The rest were strangers, friends of friends or neighbors from the next hollow over. I grabbed a beer and parked myself near the fire, not really talking, just nodding when people passed. I spent most of the evening doing that, pretending to listen, warming my hands, checking my phone even though I knew there wasn't a signal. It was a little after 9 when Nolan pulled me aside. Said something weird had happened. Tessa's car, a silver Honda she parked near the old mailbox down by the woods, had its passenger side window smashed out. Nobody heard it happen. And nothing was stolen. But the glove box was wide open, and all her papers, receipts, and random junk were dumped in a messy pile on the gravel. He was trying to stay calm, mostly for her sake, but I could tell he was pissed. The thing that really bothered him was the location. That car wasn't near the house or the main path. It was tucked down in a spot only people who'd grown up on the land would even know was there. No way someone just stumbled onto it. We taped a trash bag over the window with some duct tape from the shed. He told Tessa it was probably just someone who backed into it or maybe thought it was abandoned. She didn't say much, but the way she kept glancing at the trees made it clear she didn't buy it. We tried to shrug it off. The music got louder. Someone brought out Jell-O shots and little plastic syringes. Around 10:30, I noticed this guy off to the side. Not in costume, just jeans and a tan Carhartt jacket. He wasn't talking to anyone, didn't even have a drink, just standing near the tree line, half shadowed, like he was waiting for something. I leaned over to Nolan and asked if he recognized him. He turned to look, but the guy had vanished, just gone, as if he'd stepped backward into the trees. Probably wandered off to take a leak, Nolan said, brushing it off, but the guy never came back. Things kept rolling. Music changed to some old dubstep playlist someone found. A couple of the guys lit fireworks and nearly set a tarp on fire. One girl tripped near the fire pit and caught the edge of her wig, but she just laughed it off and posed for pictures like she meant to do it. By midnight, I'd had enough. I told Nolan I was heading out. But when I got to my truck, it wouldn't start. Lights worked. Dashboard flickered. Engine wouldn't even try. Just a click. I opened the hood, checked the battery cables like I knew what I was doing. Everything looked clean. Nolan offered me the couch. Said I could deal with the truck in the morning. I wasn't about to sit in a dead truck all night, so I took him up on it. Tessa had already gone to bed. The fire was dying, and the cold was creeping in fast. He pointed me to the guest room, tiny space with a futon and a dusty lamp that only turned on if you jiggled the cord just right. I knocked out around one. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up needing to piss. You know, the kind urgent enough to make you mad, but not enough to fully wake you. I shuffled down the hallway barefoot. The trailer creaked under me. The Bluetooth speaker in the living room was still on, glowing faint blue, though the music had stopped. As I passed the kitchen, I glanced out the window. And there he was again. Same guy. Same jacket. Standing in the middle of the field, facing the trailer. He wasn't moving, just standing there. I couldn't tell if he was looking directly at me or just toward the house. Either way, I dropped out of view so fast I nearly hit the counter. My heart was pounding, all that sleepy haze gone in an instant. I went to wake Nolan. He groaned, grumbled, but followed me back to the kitchen. When we looked again, the field was empty. We went outside, flashlights in hand, walked the edge of the clearing. Nothing. No footprints, no rustling, just cold grass and darkness pressing in from every side. We double-locked the front door when we got back. Next morning, we were barely up when Tessa started yelling. Her jewelry box was missing from the bedroom dresser. Nolan's hunting rifle too, but there was no broken glass. No kicked-in doors. Just a thin slice in the window screen, clean cut at the bottom corner. The window was unlocked from the inside. The kitchen floor was spotless. Not even a muddy print. While we waited for the sheriff, Nolan went to check the woods. Came back with this look on his face I'll never forget. He was holding Tessa's empty jewelry box in one hand, and in the other, an old Polaroid camera. The kind you have to shake the photo from. It looked dirty, like it had been left out in the dew. There were two pictures still inside. The first showed the fire pit from the party, full of people laughing and talking. The second was a picture of me, asleep, taken from the hallway through the crack in the guest room door. The sheriff eventually showed up, took a report, asked a few questions. He didn't seem too surprised, said it was probably a drifter. Happens more than people like to think. Told us to get motion lights, keep the doors locked, maybe invest in a camera or two. We nodded along. A week later, Nolan found another Polaroid on the porch. Just one. He and Tessa on the couch, watching TV. Shot through the window from outside. He didn't tell her. He just packed a duffel bag and showed up at my place 2 hours later, said he muted the brake. Ended up crashing with me for over a month. I replaced my truck battery the next day, had the old one tested. It was fine. That was 2 years ago. Ever since, I make a point to leave town the week of Halloween. Doesn't matter where I go, just not here. The Halloween party was at my friend Ria's uncle's place. This creaky old house tucked way out past Millen Hollow. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood to go. I'd been unemployed for 3 weeks, burned out and applying to jobs I didn't want just to fill the silence in my apartment. Ria, being Ria, refused to let me spiral in peace. "Come out," she said. "It's just my cousins and a couple people from town. Chill night. Beer, dumb costumes. You need out of your head." And maybe I did. So I said yes. It wasn't huge, maybe a dozen or 15 people. Ria's cousin Cal had stuffed a kiddie pool full of ice and beer, and someone lit way too many tea lights inside carved pumpkins that were already starting to slump at the edges. The air smelled like damp leaves, cheap incense, and burnt-out candles. Ria had gone all in on her costume, dressed as this dramatic cartoon vampire with velvet gloves, blood-red lipstick, and stick-on fangs that kept making her lisp. I threw on my hoodie and told anyone who asked I was going as anxiety. By around 10, it had gotten rowdy in that loose, tipsy way small parties do. The playlist swung from screechy old metal to grainy regional rap I didn't recognize, but everyone was into it. I had enough beer in me to stop obsessively checking my bank balance in my head and actually just exist in the moment for once. That's when I ended up talking to this guy in a bear costume, not just a mask, a full fur suit. Heavy-looking, cartoon-shaped paws and everything. The head had this goofy smile stitched into it, and he never took it off. I asked if he was hot in there, and he just did this exaggerated shrug and answered in this deep, gravelly voice, like he was trying to do a bit. It was almost funny at first, but the longer he kept it up, the weirder it got. He'd wander around, standing just a little too close to people while bobbing to the music, and no one could say who'd brought him. Ria thought maybe he was with someone's cousin's friend, one of those deals. People laughed when he started dancing. This slow, lurchy thing that looked like he was trying to groove in molasses, but no one ever got a look at his face, or hands for that matter. The pause stayed on. A little before 11, someone yelled that their car door was open. Then another guy checked his and found the glove box rifled through. One of the girls thought her keys were missing, and that kicked off a quiet panic. The driveway was long, winding up and around a small rise before looping back toward the trees. A few folks wandered up with phone flashlights, calling out half-heartedly. Ria went stiff next to me. She hated this kind of thing, the not knowing. She and I went to check her car, which was parked in the tree line a little off from the others. That's when we saw it. Her back window was cracked all the way across. Not shattered, not smashed in, just this perfect creeping fracture that spidered out from the center like something had been pressed against it with real force. Nothing was missing inside, But there were these long, greasy handprints down the trunk. Not just palms, full arms almost. Like someone had leaned in, slowly dragged themselves across the paint. The streak shimmered faintly under her flashlight. Rhea just whispered, "What kind of animal does that?" But I didn't say anything. I didn't have a good answer. We went back to the porch to find the guy in the bear suit was gone. We told her uncle, who barely looked up from his folding chair. He was 2 beers past invested. "Probably just some tweaker," he said, and went to lock the front door like that was going to do something. It felt more like routine than protection. We agreed to call it a night. I'd parked a little farther down the road, closer to the gravel pullout near the bend, mostly because I'd arrived late and the main drive was full. When we got there, I noticed little glints of glass in the grass, like broken ornaments. But it wasn't from my car. It was a red Subaru, idling just off the road. Driver's door hanging open. No one inside. Rhea called out just once, cautiously, but there was no answer. The engine kept humming. The dome light inside blinked weakly, like the battery was about to give out. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "We should go, now." I didn't argue. Her place was about a half hour out, tucked in one of those tiny mountain neighborhoods where all the houses have long driveways and quiet porches. No streetlights. Just motion sensor floods that don't always work. We locked the doors, double-checked the windows. I jammed a chair under the back doorknob even though it was already bolted. She turned on reruns and made popcorn like we could joke it away. We sat on her couch with the volume turned up a little too high and tried to laugh at dumb commercials between shows. I stayed over without asking. She tossed me a blanket and passed out on the recliner, still in costume, fangs on the coffee table. I must have drifted off around 3. Then at 5 sharp, I woke up to the sound of her back door sliding open. Not quietly. That door made a loud, jerky squeal every time it caught on the track, instantly recognizable. I stayed completely still. My first thought was maybe Rhea had someone over, some late-night plan I didn't know about. But I didn't hear footsteps, no voices. Just the fridge opening, a pause, then a drawer, metal scraping faintly as something got shifted inside. Then I heard my name. Soft. Almost a whisper. Rhea wasn't in the kitchen. She was crouched in the hallway, barely visible in the dark, one hand pressed against the wall, her other hand raised like she was signaling me to stay still. Her eyes were wide and locked on mine. "I thought it was you," she mouthed. "We didn't move." We listened. From the kitchen, we could hear deliberate movements. Not frantic, not hurried, just familiar. Like someone going through the motions of a routine. A chair creaked. Something was placed on the counter. Then another sound, a faint rustle like leaves stuck to wet shoes. I reached for my phone, but Rhea shook her head fast and pointed to the front door. We moved slowly, quietly. Socks on the hardwood, breath held tight in our chests. She picked up her keys from the side table without even letting them jingle. I opened the door just wide enough for us to slip out sideways. She drove us down the mountain in silence. We didn't speak until we pulled into the fire station parking lot, the only place lit up at that hour. We sat there in the idling car, watching the sky lighten through the windshield, trying to process. Neither of us even thought about going back until daylight was fully in. At 10, her uncle and cousin met us at the house. He had a shotgun. The cousin had a baseball bat with nails in it. They unlocked the door slowly. Nothing was out of place, nothing missing. No drawers opened, every cabinet closed. The sliding door was locked again. But just inside the kitchen, there were damp leaves in a neat little pile. Right next to it, a small smear of black grit, like someone had stood there long enough to drip onto the tile. And then we opened the fridge, 12 apples. Perfect, aligned side by side on the bottom shelf. Gleaming bright red, all the same size. Washed. Rhea doesn't eat apples. She hadn't bought any. There were none in the house the day before. We called the police. They took statements, shrugged, said maybe it was a prank. No prints, no forced entry, suggested a camera system, and left. She moved in with her mom 2 weeks later. Never went back for most of her stuff. I helped her load a suitcase from the garage one afternoon, but she didn't even step inside. Her bedroom window still had Halloween decals peeling off the glass. We stayed close, still talk, but we never really discussed that night. My cousin Lucas talked me into going to this Halloween party way out past Granger Ridge, near a place called Pine Hollow. The property used to belong to the Mallow family, I think. Lucas said some guy who knew a guy was throwing the party, and honestly, I only went because I was already staying at our grandma's place that weekend and he wouldn't shut up about it. It was about a 30-minute drive through the hills. Not much out there besides trees, rusted-out trailers, and gravel roads that don't show up on GPS. I kept asking him why anyone would throw a party that far out, and he just rolled his eyes and said, "It's Halloween, dude. This is where the best ones are," which, sure, if best, means you might get murdered by a raccoon or stranded with no cell service. We hit the road around 9. It was colder than I expected, and the air had that damp wood smoke kind of smell, like someone nearby was burning brush. Lucas kept messing with the heat, clicking it off and on every 2 minutes because it stank like burning dust and old leaves. I told him to knock it off, but we ended up arguing about it half the ride there. Felt like the kind of stupid backseat fight we used to have as kids, and I remember thinking, this is going to be one of those nights. We finally pulled up and parked in a field behind the barn, headlights catching these jack-o'-lanterns that were stuck on fence posts. One every 50 yards or so. Most of them were pretty simple triangles for eyes, crooked grins, but a couple had weird symbols carved into them. Not like runes or anything dramatic, just off. One looked like it had a keyhole for a mouth. Another had a spiral instead of eyes. I mentioned it to Lucas. He shrugged and said someone probably got creative. The barn itself was packed, loud music, too many people. There was a makeshift DJ booth near the loft, and they had coolers everywhere surrounded by fake cobwebs and dry ice that had mostly melted into this weird chemical-smelling puddle. The lights were string bulbs stapled along the rafters, and people were already dancing, drinking, climbing up into the hay. It smelled like sweat, damp wood, and cheap beer. I recognized a few faces from school, but most of the crowd looked older, early 30s probably. A couple of them had that not from around here vibe, like they were friends of friends who'd gotten dragged along. Nobody seemed to know who actually owned the place. There was just this handmade sign nailed to a tree by the driveway that said, "Do not go in the house," all caps, and next to it someone had hung up a fake skeleton that looked too clean to be plastic. I pointed it out. Lucas just grinned and said it was probably a joke. By midnight, people were jumping off the loft into the hay below. It was that kind of energy, loud, sloppy, a little aggressive. We stayed mostly because Lucas had started talking to this girl dressed like a nurse. She had one of those little plastic hats and fishnets, and I guess that was enough to anchor him for the night. I was about ready to leave when my phone glitched out. I looked down to send a text to Grandma, just a quick, "Staying out late, heads up," and it froze mid-typing. Then the signal bars blinked and disappeared completely. No service. Not even the SOS only thing. Just nothing. I figured it was the hills, normal out here. But then Lucas pulled out his phone to show the nurse girl something and it just died. 1 second it was fine, the next it was black screen. Wouldn't turn back on. Full battery too. He charged it in the car. We didn't really have time to say anything about it because right after that, the music cut out and the lights blinked off. All at once, total black. For a second, it felt like everyone thought it was a prank. People laughed, someone yelled something about the generator. The only light came from a couple of those glow sticks and one guy who turned on his phone flashlight. Then the front barn door slammed shut. I mean, hard, like someone shoved them from the outside. You could feel the air shift. That changed the vibe real fast. Some guy near the back said, "Okay, not funny," and someone else laughed nervously, but no one owned up to it. There was this heavy pause where you could tell everyone was waiting for the music to come back on, waiting for someone to break the tension, and then we heard banging from upstairs, the hayloft. At first, it was just one thump, then another, heavy, uneven, like someone dragging something or stomping around. A girl screamed short, startled, and 2 guys ran up to check. Lucas started toward the ladder too, but I grabbed his sleeve. I don't know why. Just had this gut feeling that going up there was a bad idea. About a minute later, one of the guys came back down. Said there was no one up there, but one of the hay bales had been torn open, like with hands. Just shredded. No one laughed at that. Someone cracked open a beer, trying to act casual, but the whole mood had shifted. Lucas said he wanted to say goodbye to the nurse girl, and I told him I'd wait in the car. I figured worst case, I'd warm up and scroll through some photos or something. The barn just felt wrong, like we'd all overstayed our welcome. When I got to the car, I saw the glass, passenger side window shattered, like someone had taken a rock or a tire iron to it. I stood there, heart thudding, waiting to hear if anyone was still around, but the woods were dead silent. No wind, no insects, just cold. I opened the door and looked inside. The glove box was open, stuff scattered everywhere, napkins, a few granola bars, some CDs, but nothing was missing. Not my wallet in the side door pocket, not Lucas's charger, not the old knife he kept clipped in the cup holder, except one thing was gone, an envelope. Lucas had brought it from Grandma's. Just a few old family photos he was supposed to drop off with our great aunt. Nothing valuable, just faded pictures of people standing in yards or at kitchen tables, but they were gone. Lucas came back a few minutes later. He thought I was joking until he saw my face. We didn't talk, just got in and drove. We were maybe 10 minutes down the gravel road, not even back to the main stretch, when the headlights caught someone standing in the middle of the road, dead center. Still, Lucas slowed down. The guy, or whatever it was, wore a long coat and this mask that looked like a pillowcase, not plastic. Just a sagging white shape with eye holes cut unevenly and something dark around the edges like soot or ash. I told Lucas not to stop. He didn't listen, just coasted forward like he couldn't help it. Maybe he thought it was a party thing, some guy playing scarecrow. We got within 10 feet and Lucas tapped the horn. The figure tilted its head. Not fast, slow, and stiff like it was confused by the sound. Then it stepped off the road, still facing us. As we passed, it lifted one hand and slapped the back of the car. It echoed like a hammer hit the trunk. Lucas floored it. We didn't stop until we hit the main highway, and even then we didn't say anything. Not until we pulled into Grandma's driveway and saw the porch light. When we told her what happened, she didn't even blink. Just said, should have known better than to go up by the Mallow place on Halloween. Not after what happened back in '97. We asked what happened. She didn't answer. The next morning, Lucas was brushing dirt off the bumper when he saw it. In the dust, clear as anything, 3 words traced by a finger. YOU brought him. We wiped it off and didn't talk about it again. I was 17 when it happened. The Halloween party was out at Maddox's uncle's place. Honestly, I didn't even want to go. I'd already told Theo I was probably going to stay home. I had a paper due the next week, and my mom wasn't thrilled about me being out so late, especially not somewhere that remote. But Theo, my cousin, talked me into it. Said it was going to be the only thing all year that didn't suck. He had this way of hyping things up like it was life or death. You miss this, he said, and you'll be stuck hearing about it from everyone who was there for the rest of the year. So I gave in. I borrowed my brother's truck. He had this 1999 Silverado with a busted taillight and no aux cord, so we just let the static from the radio hum in the background. I filled the tank at the Sinclair and swung by Theo's place around 7:30. He came out wearing a denim jacket that wasn't his and carrying a box of glow sticks. Said he borrowed them from the Dollar Hub. We got there just after it turned fully dark. You could hear the music before you saw the fire. Someone had a playlist running through 2 speakers duct taped to a wooden pole, powered by one of those camping generators that whines like a blender on its last leg. A bonfire was roaring, tall enough to make you lean back when you looked at it. People were dancing around, throwing cans into the fire for fun, laughing too loud. The air smelled like smoke and wet leaves and beer. Someone had turned an old tire into a swing, and it kept creaking like it was trying to keep up with the beat. It felt like one of those nights that teetered between good chaos and something else. Like it could tip either way. Around 10, Maddox brought out a big box full of masks. Not the kind you pick up at the drugstore. These were heavy, stiff, and weird looking. Some had frayed leather straps. Some were made of that hard old paper mache that feels like dried skin. A few still had cobwebs inside. He said he found them in a locked cabinet in his uncle's shed, the one that hadn't been opened in years. Nobody seemed to care where they came from. It was Halloween after all. Everyone wanted something creepy. They started picking through the box like kids on Christmas morning. Mine looked like a mule. Not a cartoon mule or anything. It had this long, narrow snout and square teeth painted in a way that made them look too human. The eyes were just black holes. Theo's was almost worse. These huge black circles like welding goggles stretched into a plasticky flesh-colored face. It didn't even look like a person, more like something trying to be one. Maddox told us to wear them for a group photo, which seemed fair. He even lined us up in front of the barn door, where someone had strung a sheet with fake blood on it like a backdrop. The camera flash went off 3 times. Then he said we had to keep the masks on until midnight to keep the spirits from recognizing us. He was laughing when he said it, but people were already putting them back on. Some of them whooped like it was a game, so we did. People drifted off after that. A few wandered into the woods. Some disappeared into the barn. I stuck by the fire, not really talking to anyone, just watching. Theo had wandered off sometime after 11. I figured he was off hooking up or messing around with a group somewhere. I wasn't worried yet. At midnight, I pulled my mask off. It was starting to itch around the edges, and I was sweating underneath it. The air outside hit cold and sudden on my skin. I looked around and realized how far away we really were. It hit different in that moment. You ever have one of those times where you suddenly feel how empty everything around you is? Like all the noise you were hearing was just covering up how alone you actually were? I took out my phone. No service, not even a single bar. I started asking around for Theo. Nobody had seen him in a while. I figured maybe he'd headed back to the truck or gotten sick in the trees. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a scream. It came from the woods, clean and sharp. Not a horror movie scream, just one sudden, short burst like someone was genuinely shocked or hurt. Everything stopped. The music, the talking, just silence. Then another scream, louder and closer. This one had panic in it. People looked at each other trying to read the room. A few laughed, thinking it was someone messing around. Maddox laughed too, but it was off. Then something heavy came crashing through the tree line and landed near the fire with a thud. A mask, the same one Theo had been wearing. It was cracked right down the middle, and the inside hard to explain. It was wet, not soaked, but wet enough that it caught the firelight in a way that made my stomach turn. I took off running, straight into the woods. I didn't even think. I just moved. A few others ran behind me, but they stopped once the trees thickened. The path wasn't clear anymore. Branches slapped my arms and legs. Roots caught my boots. I was calling his name over and over. Then I heard crashing through the brush ahead of me. And there he was. Theo stumbled out, hands shaking, hoodie torn at the cuff, blood smeared on one sleeve. His pupils looked huge. He kept blinking like he couldn't quite focus. I grabbed him and asked what happened. He said he didn't know. Something grabbed him from behind. He didn't see it. Just arms, sudden pressure, then voices. Low ones, murmuring. Not speaking to him, speaking around him. He said he saw lights, not flashlights. Small green ones, floating low, almost like fireflies, but too solid, too intentional. He kept saying they didn't blink right. We walked back, both of us tripping over roots and our own feet. When we got back to the clearing, Maddox tried to make another joke, but nobody laughed. People saw the blood. They started loading in the trucks like a fire drill. Dust kicked up from tires spinning out. Theo and I left too. The whole ride back, we didn't say a word. Just listened to the gravel ping off the undercarriage. When we got home, something felt wrong immediately. The motion light didn't come on. Then we saw the front door, wide open, just swinging a little in the breeze. I told Theo to stay in the truck. I reached into the glove box and grabbed the CB mic my brother had rigged it in case of emergencies and called the sheriff's office. We didn't go inside, just sat there with the headlights pointed straight at the porch. Deputies showed up about 20 minutes later. They did a full sweep. Said it didn't look like a break-in exactly. Nothing was missing, but everything was disturbed. Cabinets left open, drawers half pulled. All the pictures in the living room turned backward, like someone had walked through the house and deliberately unmade it. Nothing valuable was gone, except my dog. The laundry room door was wide open. Her leash was still hanging, untouched. But she was gone. The cop said maybe she got spooked and ran out when the door opened. But it didn't add up. Nothing else made sense either. The scene didn't look ransacked. It looked arranged. Like someone had made a point, we stayed at my uncle's place that night. Theo didn't sleep, neither did I. We never went to another Halloween party. The year the Halloween party was at Colby's place, I was 27. Now, Colby and I have been best friends since elementary school. Worked maintenance at the middle school, which somehow suits him. He bought this rundown cabin a few miles out on Red Finch Road, said he wanted a project. Place had no insulation, spotty power, and raccoons that acted like they paid rent, but Colby loved it. Spent his weekends fixing it up with YouTube tutorials and borrowed tools. So when he said he was hosting, we were all a little surprised. Just bring a bottle and don't park on the septic tank, he told everyone. Sounded like a party. I showed up just before dark, dressed like a scarecrow. It was a lazy costume, jeans, a flannel shirt, and some straw I'd stuffed into my sleeves and collar, but it worked. When I pulled in, there were already 30 or so people scattered around the yard. Some I recognized, some I didn't. Locals mostly, plus a few folks from Briar Ridge or Woodland. Happens every year. People bring friends, cousins, whoever's crashing on their couch that weekend. But there was one guy I didn't recognize at all. He stood just at the edge of the tree line, away from the fire and the music, not talking to anyone. He was in costume, sort of. Wore this homemade-looking mask, like papier-mâché, but rougher. It had these warped eye holes and a stitched-on smile that didn't line up with the mouth beneath. The paint on it looked like dried clay, cracked and dull. The mask was so strange, it was hard to even tell what it was supposed to be. Maybe that was the point. He never moved much, just stood there watching. I figured he was with someone, maybe a cousin from out of town, or one of those guys who shows up to parties and doesn't say much. We've all got a friend like that. About an hour in, I caught a weird moment behind the shed. Colby was out there arguing with someone, couldn't see who. It was quick, just a flash of movement, but it looked intense. His shoulders were squared like he was trying to block someone from walking past him. I didn't think much of it at first. Figured someone had too much to drink and started something stupid. Colby came back to the fire looking thrown off. Not panicked, but shaken. You know that look someone gets when they've seen something that doesn't make sense, and they're still trying to convince themselves it does? I asked what happened, and he just brushed it off. Nothing. Forget it. The party rolled on. Someone started blasting music off their phone. People were dancing, drinking, throwing glow sticks around. It felt normal again, until it didn't. Little things started piling up. Someone's tires got slashed back too, deep cuts. No one saw it happen, but it killed the mood for sure. Then 2 phones went missing. Everyone blamed it on drunk misplacement until Bailey, Colby's cousin, came back crying. She said she'd gone to pee behind the barn and heard someone moving behind her. Branches cracking. Then she saw someone standing there, just barely in the shadows. She screamed, and whoever it was took off into the woods. At that point, a few folks started looking toward the tree line, and the guy in the mask was gone. No one saw him leave. No one even knew who he came with. People said it was probably teenagers from Boone. They've pulled crap before, sneaking into parties, stealing stuff, egging cars. But this didn't feel like that. I went into the cabin around 10 to grab my jacket, and the front door was wide open. That was weird. Colby's always been obsessive about locking up. I'd seen him yell at someone once for leaving their car window cracked. He's that kind of guy. Inside, the air felt wrong. Colder than it should have been. Like the kind of cold that creeps into your sleeves and sits on your spine. And right there on the floor, muddy footprints. Bare feet, damp and smeared, like someone walked in straight from the woods. I called out for Colby, nothing. Then I heard glass breaking. I followed the sound to the bathroom. The window was shattered glass inside, meaning it was broken from outside. And on the windowsill, just one bloody fingerprint, bright red against the wood. I backed out, heart pounding now, and went to find Colby. "Your house got broken into," I told him. He didn't even look surprised. He just said, "It wasn't broken into." I blinked. What does that mean? He looked around like he didn't want anyone else to hear. Then he leaned in and said, "Lo, that guy in the mask, I saw him inside. Before the party. In the hallway." "What?" I thought he was helping set up. I didn't think. His voice trailed off. He looked pale. We both turned to look at the edge of the woods. The masked guy wasn't there anymore. That was it for us. We started clearing people out, telling them the cops were on their way. Most people didn't argue. They grabbed their stuff and left quick. That small town instinct, you hear cops, you leave. Once everyone was gone, we did one more sweep of the house. Colby looked defeated, like he didn't want to be there anymore. He pulled a shoebox from under his bed. "I didn't show you this earlier," he said. Inside were Polaroids, dozens of them. Photos of the cabin, taken from the woods at night. Some were blurry, some had been taken through the windows. In one, Colby was asleep on the couch, mouth open, unaware. "I found the botch behind the shed a couple weeks ago," he said. "Didn't think anyone would believe me. We left that night. I offered him my couch back in town. But when we pulled up to my place, my side door was open. I always locked that door. Always. Inside, nothing was missing. Not my TV, not my wallet, not even my old laptop. But everything had been disturbed. Drawers yanked open. Photo frames moved. Closet doors wide, like someone had been searching for something. In the bathroom, stuck to the mirror with thick black tape, was one of the phones that had gone missing from the party. On the screen was a photo of me, standing by the bonfire, but it was taken from behind the tree line. I called the sheriff. He and a deputy came out, took a look, asked a few questions, then said it was probably teenagers messing around, but I knew better. 2 days later, Colby's truck was trashed, windshield smashed, and carved deep into the hood were 4 words: "You already invited me." He didn't wait around after that. Packed a bag and left town the next day. Moved in with a cousin in Kentucky. Said the cabin gave him the creeps.